Coming up, Apartheid-Free DC, Restaurant Workers Solidarity, a special interview with Frankie Santos Fritz, our endorsed candidate for Greenbelt City Council, and how you can join the socialist fight. But first, the Rental Act ravages DC tenants' rights. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MDC Dispatch. I'm your host, Tony, and I'll be bringing you the news and events from Metro DC DSA. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and be on the lookout for a new Dispatch episode every first and third Sunday of each month. DC has long been a place lauded for its strong renters protection, including TOPA, a unique law that gives tenants an opportunity to purchase their home when the landlord wants to sell it. But the passage of the Rental Act by the DC Council has chipped away at that legacy. This legislation was championed by pro-real estate lobbyists, council members White, Henderson, and Bonds, and the Mayor Bourgeois herself. The Rental Act shortens the time frame for evictions, allowing landlords to evict tenants 10 days after serving notices. It also prevents TOPA from applying to buildings built within the past 15 years, those with 4 or less units, and any future housing built in the city. This is a radical departure from the actions of neighboring Montgomery and Prince George's counties, which have adopted strong rent controls in an attempt to cushion DMV suburban sprawl. As politically savvy investors gain control of the district, tenants are being squeezed beyond their means. Join Metro DC DSA's Internationalism Working Group for a training at MLK Library in DC on how to canvass for the Apartheid-Free DC campaign with DC for Palestine. As the 2-year mark of the intensified genocide in Gaza approaches, this training will equip activists with the skills and knowledge needed to join the campaign. The canvas invites local businesses and organizations to sign onto the Apartheid-Free pledge to boycott Israeli goods. Attendees will learn about the crime of apartheid, how to participate in canvassing efforts, and how to support organizations finding alternatives to products that support the Zionist occupation of Palestine. RSVP in the link down below. Attention bar, restaurant, and nightlife workers, join the Restaurant Workers Solidarity and Support Network. As federal invasion continues in DC, bar, restaurant, and late-night workers are finding themselves on the front line of federal harassment and assault. Workers are getting organized to coordinate against the takeover regime and to build long-term power among service workers. Workers who fill out this secure survey, which can be found below, can be plugged into a larger group of restaurant workers from specific neighborhoods to share information, ask for support, and coordinate with neighborhood anti-occupation efforts. Service workers will also be preparing community defense trainings for those interested in learning best practices if ICE or other agents enter the workplace or are harassing community members in your neighborhood. The project is a collaborative effort by ROCDC and the Fair Price, Fair Wage Coalition, with support from the Metro DC DSA Labor Working Group. Workers with questions can email organize@rocdc.org. Angola Apartheid and Our Type of National Liberation, a new Washington Socialist article, explores U.S. imperialism and history's rhymes. The popular podcast series Blowback will release its new season on September 22nd, now focused on Angola and the U.S.-backed wars in Southern Africa. Nothing could be more relevant to the current political moment as the U.S. once again allies with an apartheid state that commits aggressive proxy wars on its behalf in the name of regional stability, MDC DSA member Patrick Dalton writes. Read more in the Washington Socialist, link in the description. And now a special interview with Frankie Santos Fritz, Metro DC DSA endorsed candidate for City Council in Greenbelt, Maryland. Today, we actually have a guest on, City Council candidate Frankie Santos Fritz, City Council of Greenbelt candidate, on today to discuss his campaign. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about your campaign and maybe a little bit about the city of Greenbelt and why it's so special and kind of unique.
Yeah. My name is Frankie Santos Fritz, as you said. I am running for Greenbelt City Council in the November 4th election. So if you know anyone who lives in the city of Greenbelt, Maryland, please encourage them to vote. And please let them know that they aren't registered to vote. They have to register to vote in a city election by October 6th. I've been a community organizer since I moved to the DMV for college about 12 years ago. I've done a variety of different campaigns. My first campaign was on fossil fuel divestment, but I also did campus labor organizing and general labor organizing. I've worked in the labor movement as a staffer. I've also worked on numerous election campaigns as well. And currently, I'm a policy staffer in local government. I work on public safety and housing policy. Uh, and I think just the way the state of the country is right now, we really need to get more people involved in our political process. In the last election, only 1 in 6 of my neighbors who were eligible to vote voted in the last election. But we know that all of our neighbors are being impacted by the attacks of the Trump administration. Whether it's our neighbors like Kilmar Abrego Garcia, one town over in Beltsville, who sought justice. His family sought justice for him and continue to seek justice for him at the Greenbelt courthouse right in our city, right here. So this is a very local story. Kilmar is only 1 year older than I am. He's 31. He has 3 kids, and he was kidnapped by ICE and deported to El Salvador. But he was actually kidnapped at the local IKEA here.
Really?
About a 12-minute drive from my house.
I've been there
every day. So, these are incredibly personal stories. He's a member of CASA. I've been endorsed by the political arm of CASA in Action, because, we have that shared vision that we need to be a welcoming community for immigrants and build an economy that works for all working people. So these are really local issues. I live right off of the Baltimore-Washington Parkway in Greenbelt, which runs through our city. And now Baltimore and Washington are facing increasing federal threats of occupation. Obviously, D.C. is being occupied, and I've long been a supporter of D.C.'s statehood. But now, those same tactics that were tested in L.A., tested in D.C., are now being threatened to Baltimore, which would basically put almost all of the metro areas in Maryland under occupation. Terrifying precedent of what a president can do if we allow him to do that and we don't fight back.
Back a little bit to the more local aspect. I know Greenbelt's a really kind of unique place. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it and its history and what attracted you to it?
Yeah, I'm deeply enamored with the history of Greenbelt. I've been studying it since I first heard about the city. Really, I think people in the Metro DC area, if you ride WMATA, the Metro rail system, at the end of the Green Line, you'll hear about Greenbelt. But I know about as much about Greenbelt as I know about Shady Grove or Franconia Springfield. Right? What those are just names. And then I heard that there was a planned community during the New Deal that was built as a federal relief project and operated as working class housing and what we would call now, I think, social housing for many decades. And then it was privatized. But the neighbors came together and bought it out as a cooperative.
Really?
Today, it is still Maryland's oldest and largest housing cooperative. With over 1,400 units, and I'm happy to be a member of that cooperative. It really was such a shining example of how 13,000 people during the New Deal, a lot of these folks were unhoused. A lot of these folks were suffering from disease because it had been several years into the Great Depression. A lot of people had suffered quite a bit. The federal government said, we're going to put you back to work, and we're going to get you medical treatment, and then we're going to ship you out, and we're going to build this federal community 13 miles from the White House. I looked into that history. I found it interesting. I actually gave a talk to Metro DC DSA about it through our Socialist Night School series 2021. And I always knew that it was the kind of place that I wanted to live in.
So what are the biggest challenges that Greenbelt is facing, and what are you interested in achieving if you win the city council race?
Yeah, I think you have to foreground just, once again, the federal attacks on our neighbors, whether our immigrant neighbors are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or queer, questioning neighbors. Those attacks have been terrifying to folks. And especially our economy is heavily dependent upon federal jobs. A lot of our folks are employed at NASA, which is based in Greenbelt, just outside the city limits. There's the USDA has the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center, which has been doing incredible research for, I think, at least 90, if not 100 years. It piloted a lot of technology that has improved our agricultural system, a lot of research that wasn't being done by the private sector. And now Trump wants to break it up into several smaller research centers and deposit them across the country, causing all the folks here to either have to choose to move to Minneapolis, or not even Minneapolis, Minnesota, or Oklahoma, or wherever in the country, when they wanted to come to this facility that had been open for 90 years plus, that has received a lot of investment. So we're just going to shut it down. And other facilities, obviously, we have folks who work in Social Security, we have folks who work in any federal agency. You can imagine, just because of our proximity to Washington, D.C., that is really a strong basis of our economy. And we do need to diversify our economy. We need to create more opportunities for local wealth building and economic prosperity for working class people. And unfortunately, we can no longer rely upon the federal government, which was once seen as a gateway to the middle class getting a federal job, especially for women and Black and brown folks who oftentimes were passed over for opportunities in the private sector. The federal government was one of the first sectors to do that and to really integrate much faster and give opportunities to folks. And, Trump now attacks those people as DEI hires, when if you actually look at the fact, many of these folks are some of the most highly educated people in this country, right?
Absolutely.
Like you look at federal employees, we have some of the smartest people. One of my neighbors here in Greenbelt works at NASA and is a published author on the ionosphere of the sun. And I don't even know, candidly, what that actually entails day to day. I don't know what NASA is researching day to day when it comes to the sun, because it's so far out of my scope as a humanities major. But I'm glad someone is doing that.
I was going to say
research, right? We need to know that. We need to know if there are developments, if there's certain heat spots in the sun that could impact agricultural productivity. You think that would be something that the government would want to know about.
Yeah.
And even the private sector benefits from that knowledge, but they don't want to pay for it directly, right?
Can you talk a little bit about your time in the DSA and like why you think it's such an important organization, and like what you think their strategy should be and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I joined DSA after Trump won. I'd heard a little bit about them beforehand, especially they first really crossed my radar during Bernie's campaign. They kind of were one of the first groups and most vocal groups to endorse Bernie early on, and unapologetically call themselves socialists.
Right.
But I was a campaigner for a bunch of issues on college campuses. So I didn't feel a need to join another group at that time. But after Trump won, I realized that the movements that I cared about, the labor movement, the climate movement, we were fighting tooth and nail on these really narrow campaigns, right? We were fighting incremental campaigns under Obama, and sometimes making some headway. We made a lot of headway to stop the Keystone XL pipeline. That was a big issue during the latter years of the Obama administration. I was concerned about, unionizing workplaces. How do we do that? Some victories were starting to slowly be won in the final years of the Obama administration. And then all that work that we had just went up in smoke. Donald Trump ran on opposing all the things we had worked so hard to win. Yeah. And people had promised us, the Democrats had promised us, don't worry, he can never win. And I think we all kind of deluded ourselves into thinking that. But he actually ran in 2016 a very successful populist campaign. And he was able to win, I think, mostly on the despair of the electorate. Things had gotten really bad across the country.
Yeah.
Those after the recession, those were the first times that in multiple years in a row, the U.S. life expectancy went down. Really pointing to a really dire situation that, the few threads that we were hanging on to before the recession were snapping. And that was across the board. I realized that we could no longer fight single issue campaigns, right? If we looked at like mass incarceration in the prison industrial complex, if we looked at climate change, if we looked at Palestine, if we looked at all these issues, we could no longer be fighting these issues separately.
Right.
That there is an overarching system that is causing this much violence and harm in our communities. And at a certain level, I didn't have the language for it at the time, but democracy can't survive if the average voter's living standards continue to go down. Because people at a certain point are going to lose faith in popular government, in electoral participation, and they're going to vote for the nihilistic candidate, or not vote at all, because it's like, what is the government doing for me? Why does it matter, right? It's like, I don't, you if you're an activist on one or two issues, maybe you continue to vote, but most people aren't activists. Most people are trying to survive. I think that DSA represented the best attempt to bring all of these movements under one tent, and organize politically a party, not like a Democratic Party or a Republican Party, but an actual organization, with a shared political goal, and those goals are set democratically. DSA is bringing back that spirit of the organic intellectual, in that people are learning how to use working class democracy to achieve political objectives. And as we can scale that up, I think we can make a huge change in this country very quickly. And I think Zoran Mamdani is the number one example of that. That you can go from a relatively fringe group, but if you build cohesive collective power across an entire city, and you can call people to action. They mobilized 50,000 volunteers, and I was one of them. I went up there twice to canvass for him. It was some of the best canvassing, besides for myself, that I've ever done. Now is the time to really consider running for something, whether it's a union office or being part of an organization or running for local office, to make those connections with your neighbors, because obviously other people aren't doing it. We really need to change how we think about, there's some people who lead us, and then there's everyone else, and it's like that cannot be the way we organize. We need to really get everyone at the table, and that's going to require a lot of people step up. And maybe if you're not ready to run, I encourage you to volunteer on a campaign and learn how other people do it. So maybe you can help yourself or someone else run for something a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. But we can't wait any longer. We need to be developing these skills. We need to be cultivating this analysis in everyone, and we need to be bringing people into organizations like DSA that are democratic, and are unapologetically fighting for the working class.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
I'll just say that get organized, join an organization. Please support my campaign as well. If you're inspired, or if you know folks who live in Greenbelt, let them know. frankieforgreenbelt.org. And then there's the link to contribute or volunteer. But I really do think that we have a really great shot at winning this election. The reception has been amazing. So many people have just thanked me for running, right? And you wouldn't think that in our day and age, that people want people to run for office, or that a lot of people have given up on politics. But a lot of people thanked me for running, just to say thank you for trying, thank you for believing in the community, thank you for offering your time, because we need new leadership. And I think communities across the country are ready for new leadership.
Absolutely.
I think that's the story of Zoran Mamdani's campaign. We need more good stories like that, of people fighting back, of people saying that we don't need to bend the knee to the Andrew Cuomos or the Donald Trumps of the world, that they don't actually own this country, that working people, when organized, we can do a lot. And then join an organization. And if you need somewhere to start, I don't think you'll go wrong if you pick DSA, DSAUSA.org. So those are the DSA is there are other organizations too, but a lot have endorsed me. But get involved in your union, form a tenant association, and then join DSA to help you with the bigger picture strategy. I know if we have unions in our workplaces, militant unions in our workplaces, real tenant organizations in our communities, and we're supporting one another, we're fighting back against ICE and police abuse, and we have DSA on the ballot, I think there's nothing we can't accomplish.
Frankie Santos Fritz, candidate for City Council in Greenbelt, thank you so much for joining us today. Hope we can have you on again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and have a good weekend.
Have a good one. Thanks, Frankie. Thanks, Frankie. Come back anytime. Join our chapter for any of the huge slate of events coming up in the next few weeks. RSVPs linked in the description. Join us for the Frankie for Greenbelt voter drive cookout ahead of the Prince George's County deadline to register to vote. We'll have food and info to get you plugged into the political process in Greenbelt. This event is hosted by Frankie Fritz, who's running for Greenbelt City Council this fall. Today, Sunday, the 21st at 3 p.m. Also, today at 1 p.m., join the Montgomery County DSA for a weekend of canvassing for MDC DSA member and endorsed candidate Omodamola Williams for Gaithersburg City Council. Omo is running to get rent stabilization in the city, increased police accountability, giving municipal workers the right to collectively bargain, and more. Are you looking for a new job? Want to join the labor movement and build power on the shop floor with your coworkers? Join our Workers Organizing Workers SALT training series, Monday, the 22nd. Metro DC DSA's Abolition Working Group will be hosting a Know Your Rights presentation about DC's Family Court and Domestic Violence Court. Participants will learn how to navigate child custody matters without a lawyer, discuss how to file for and get a civil protection order, and the impact that has on custody cases, and get resources on legal organizations that provide free legal advice or representation. Held virtually on Saturday, the 27th. Volunteer to canvass for DSA-endorsed Frankie Santos Fritz in Greenbelt. Make new friends, meet your Greenbelt neighbors, get political experience, and stay for the fun happy hour afterwards. No experience necessary, Saturday and Sunday, the 27th and 28th. Metro DC DSA will be hosting its next general body meeting on October 19th. Meet your comrades and be part of the process. And as always, new members are welcome. RSVP for the location or to join virtually. More than just DSA is hosting events in the coming weeks, so are many other groups. Here are a few other upcoming events. Tired of the Philippine government's corruption? Join Anak Bayan today, Sunday, September 21st from 2 to 4 p.m. at DuPont Circle to fight back. September 21st serves as a stark reminder of martial law, of the Marcos dictatorship, and the entire Marcos political dynasty is built on corruption, plunder, and the systematic theft of the Filipino people. Did you enjoy watching Star Wars Andor? Join your DC neighbors for a group discussion about what the show tells us about resisting fascism and what we can apply here in DC. Attend and discuss on Tuesday, September 23rd at 7, facilitated by Ward 1 Mutual Aid and Ward 2 Mutual Aid. Join Jewish Voice for Peace DC Metro on the picket line at Columbia Heights Target. The Boycott Target DMV Coalition, alongside national organizers, have called for a boycott of Target until they reverse their decisions capitulating to racist fascists. Plus, learn about the connections between the fight for Palestinian liberation against anti-Semitism and against racist fascism. Saturday, September 27th. Find these activities and many more at the calendar of events on our website and on our full weekly update, also linked in the description. Occupied DC and the DMV are under siege by militaristic authoritarians. Want to fight fascism from the heart of empire? Want to throw sand in the gears of power? Visit dsausa.org to join DSA and fight to build socialism. We're the alternative that works for people, not profiteers and their captive politicians. Metro DC DSA is the third largest chapter in America with over 2,000 members. We're very active in the community and have groups focused on labor, tenant rights, LGBTQ rights, environmental activism, and much more. DSA is the largest socialist organization in America, and we would love to have you as a member. These and other stories, along with links and sources, can be found in the Metro DC DSA Weekly Update newsletter, which you can find linked in the description. This production has been a collaboration of members of Metro DC DSA. Look for new videos on the first and third Sunday of every month. I'm your host, Tony. A better world is possible.